The first sitting week of this parliamentary year, and it begins amidst a storm for the coalition. We're not even talking today about the bushfire crisis, which was, well, the first crisis for the government in 2020, indeed starting 2019. But what's happening with the Nationals? Bridget McKenzie yesterday finally fell on her sword. That was after a lot of pressure, and that Philip Gation's report, it was around a technicality in the end, and the fact that she had a membership to a gun club that got a grant from this community sports program. That, though, has unleashed tension and instability within the Nationals themselves. Barnaby Joyce has confirmed with Sky News, with my colleague Laura Joyce reporting this morning, Barnaby Joyce will be putting his hand up for the leadership. The only caveat is there needs to be a spill, first of all. Here he was speaking this morning.
Obviously, after a spill, there is technically no leader. That is a right in a Westminster system of government. It's up to others if there's a spill. I believe that I've done the job before. Every seat we've got is 101 in the previous election before the one we've just had. But I'll leave that up to my colleagues. They can make the call, and that's where it'll stop.
So do you have colleagues? Have you been told that they will make the call for a spill?
I'm not another person. If they choose to do it, they choose to do it. And I would never put a certainty on anything. I've said every time people have asked me that if there's a vacancy, and after a spill there is, that I'd stand. That's nothing new.
And he has said that throughout. Of course, it's a little bit more of a relevant question right now. According to the incumbent, though, it's not an open question. This was Michael McCormack responding to that speculation this morning.
Barnaby Joyce has said that he will stand if there is a spill called. No spill has been called, and I'm not expecting one to be. Well, I'm sure Barnaby is ready to be the leader of the party should there be a spill called, but there has been no spill called. There is no vacancy for the leadership position. I am the leader of the party. I have the party's support.
Nothing to see here. So what is happening here? What's the truth of the matter? Joining me now here in the studio, our political editor, Andrew Clennell. We know there can be a spill if one person calls for it. That could be Barnaby Joyce. You'll need a seconder. How is this lining up, the likelihood of a contest and where the numbers and the people might go?
Well, he would get a seconder, that's for sure. But the issue is, will he go for that spill? And he would only go for that spill, it's my understanding, really, if he believed he could win that vote. So let's have a look at the numbers, and let's have a look at what various national sources have told me this morning, if we can bring that up, in terms of the names of people who would potentially back a spill and back Barnaby Joyce. I've got George Christensen, potentially Matt Canavan, even though he's saying otherwise, Joyce himself, Keith Pitt, Lou O'Brien, David Gillespie and Bridget McKenzie. McKenzie, it's been said by some Nationals, would look to back a spill because she's angry at being punted from Cabinet and not backed ultimately by Michael McCormack. Some of these people are motivated by what they believe is weak leadership by Michael McCormack, others by the fact that there's a bit of anger that Bridget McKenzie hit the fence, but say Angus Taylor didn't. There was a bit of a feeling that Michael McCormack should have fought for a situation where Bridget McKenzie was protected, or a Liberal involved in scandal should go as well. The other thing I can tell you, Tom, is that David Littleproud, as I understand it, wouldn't be running even if a spill's called. So if a spill's called, there had been a feeling he could perhaps come through the middle as someone who hasn't got the barnacles that Barnaby Joyce has, or has seemed to be a weak leader like Michael McCormack, but Littleproud wouldn't do that. He'd let it be a Joyce-McCormack contest, so that's what we'd see. If you were to put a bet on it at the moment, you would say that Joyce would fall short, that he could only muster 6 or at most 9 of the 11 he needs for a spill, and that we wouldn't end up even with that motion. But of course we have 24 hours to go.
We do. So these numbers, would you consider them locked in behind a spill and Barnaby Joyce? Some might go for a spill and not Barnaby Joyce. How do those? We'll bring them up.
Oh no, I think all of those people, if they were to vote for a spill, and that's an if, and I'm sure some would come out and deny that this would be the case, but that's certainly what Joyce is looking at. I believe they would all vote for Joyce. Littleproud wouldn't put his hand up. So no matter where we come out of this, we're at a situation where 6 to 9 of the Nats probably want McCormack gone. Survives this time, what does it mean down the track? That's the issue.
And that would depend, as we saw, in a similar way. They're not the same contest as the Liberal Party, but the number of votes you get against you does have an impact. You've got to balance that off against everybody knew Michael McCormack didn't command an overwhelming number in the party room when he got the leadership. And indeed, I guess a lot of people thought they'd probably lose the election and then that would be the time for him to go. That didn't happen.
Yes.
So there's this sort of residual tension there in that regard.
Yeah, so there's a bit of a feeling that he's something of a Stephen Bradbury in terms of getting the job, and there's a feeling that he's underperformed. There's actually a feeling he's got a bit better because he was doing so badly early on. And there's also Barnaby Joyce, with some of the outbursts he's had, has put some MPs off as well. Some people think he's a bit sort of, shall we say, eccentric for the job. Is he ready to go back in? You know, he could give stronger representation. There are pluses, but there are also minuses to reinstalling him. And then there's that general argument that Nationals have, which stops them voting for this, which is, we're not like the Libs. Yeah. We don't do this. For Joyce's part, his argument is, we don't want to be just a soft branch of the Liberal Party, and that's what we appear to be here, instead of, you know, the old Nationals fighting for the bush like the party he led.
Matthew Canavan has spoken this morning. He says he won't be running for deputy.
No, I've already said no. I'm not running for deputy. But look, obviously, I want to say up front that Bridget's done a fantastic job as Agriculture and Sports Minister. She's been a passionate fighter for regional Australia. I know she will continue to be a passionate fighter for regional areas. It's unfortunate what's happened, but the Prime Minister set a high standard, and now I'll have discussions with my colleagues about how we move forward.
Will you back Barnaby for the leadership?
Well, look, this is all speculation as far as I can see. I know you in the media here don't just want to sometimes hold the starter's gun, you want to push people off the starting line. So I haven't had any conversations with Barnaby about this. Well, look, I haven't seen that myself.
He says he won't run unless someone calls a spill. Will you be that person?
I've got, well, I'll come back to that, just one thing at a time. I've got Barnaby's number, so if, I'll give him a call. I'm not going to speak to him through the media. No, of course, I support Michael McCormack as leader of the Nationals Party, but I will have these conversations with my colleagues.
So you won't call a spill?
Well, I've rejected that. Now, guys, I've got to go, sorry.
Is Michael McCormack doing a good job?
We're doing a fantastic job as Nationals, delivering great results. I mean, look at what we've been able to achieve, particularly for the resources industry in my part of the world. We've got that Adani Carmichael mine going. We've got agricultural firing. We've got all these market agreements and access. We're backing the continued expansion of live exports. Imagine what we'd have. If we'd had a Labor government the last few years, we probably wouldn't have a live export industry. They'd be shutting down our coal industry and we'd have no jobs in regional Australia. That's what I'm focused on, not my job, not anyone else's job. I continue to focus on those jobs, and I do have to go to another radio interview. I love you all, but I've got to do another media interview.
The question for anyone right now throwing their hat in the ring or looking at this spill on the basis of this issue is what Michael McCormack could have done differently. You touched on, you know, whether perhaps he just gets behind and backs Bridget, but there are plenty of people saying Bridget hasn't been doing a good job generally, and that it was very hard for her to survive. You know, it's also, you don't want to posit everything onto her in this. It looks like broader involvement, and that's why the Gations report came. But what's your take on how fair or unfair it is to say that this was a failure of Michael McCormack in this particular crisis?
Yeah, it's pretty tough, isn't it? It's a bit of a vehicle in a sense, and I think what's the alternative is the alternative that a Nats minister can never be sacked for misconduct. I mean, surely the government can't have that situation. McCormack did everything he could to appear as if he was backing McKenzie. I actually believed him and Morrison probably determined a while ago that she was going to go. We know about that dinner at the Lodge with Josh Frydenberg, for example. But having said that, you're right. What more could he have done if the PM wanted her out and had ordered that report? Yeah, it's more a situation of this as yet another sign of what Nationals see as pretty ineffective leadership. I'd like to see a poll around the country of who the Nationals leader and Deputy Prime Minister is, because I think it'd be a pretty low score in terms of people who could name Michael McCormack.
And the rhetoric did seem to change when the story about the gun club came out, because people could straight away see that link about the conflict, which goes to the ministerial code. One person not all that complimentary of Michael McCormack's leadership was David Gillespie. He's going to throw his hat in the ring for the deputy position. He was speaking this morning.
When he got the job, I gave him my advice then, which stands, is that he needs to do more than, you know, the Bush regional media. When you're in a leadership position, you've got to do the national stuff as well, and that advice stands. But
so he hasn't done enough since he's taken the leadership position?
Look, everyone would love him to do more. Everyone would love him to do more, particularly people in my part of the world, because that's what they expect leaders to do.
Could Barnaby do more?
Barnaby is out there pretty much. He's probably the most prominent backbencher that we have got, so he certainly does his fair share of media for the cause for regional Australia, and I really appreciate that.
We'll have David Gillespie on the program in about an hour's time. Bold prediction time, Andrew Clennell. You can feel free to just pivot from this because I don't have one right now.
I'm usually more confident on these things, but it's still a moving situation. I think if you were going to put your money on a situation, it'd be that there's no spill, that he can't quite muster the numbers, Joyce, and that's why he's given himself that out with that language. It's up to my colleagues to call a spill, not me. He hasn't said, I'm definitely calling a spill, I'm definitely running. I think he's going to end up with solid support of about 7. He needs to get that number up to 11 in the next 24 hours.
Andrew Clennell, you'll keep your finger on the pulse. We'll keep updated. Thank you.